You have the boy's magic.
No, this magic belongs to no boy.
Peter Pan and Wendy is here, and it's everything we expected for the trailer. In fact, it's worse. Look, there were some things we expected, like we knew Peter Pan wasn't going to be able to act.
She is a fairy. If I know one thing about fairies, it's that they don't take kindly to being called bugs.
But he's like that throughout the entire movie.
It's Hook.
Captain Hook.
Who else would be trying to kill me this early in the morning?
Combine that with the terrible fight choreography, which admittedly wouldn't be his fault, but a Peter Pan he ain't. The issue is with the rest of the movie, which is why we get a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes from the audience score. And that is reasonable. I'd give it 20s to early 30s maybe, which is largely for the soundtrack, the sets, and Jude Law. Everything else is awful. In fact, Peter Pan and Wendy takes all of the key elements from the source material and goes about systematically destroying them all. No character is left untouched, and I can't help but think that's deliberate. Because nobody expected much from this to begin with. There were red flags right from the first trailer with 51,000 upvotes and nearly 600,000 downvotes. The audience knew one thing. They were changing it. They hated the source material and they thought it needed to be fixed. And it only got worse. They released a second trailer which tried to avoid all of the bad points from the first one, and still, people saw through it with 19,000 upvotes and 235,000 downvotes. Because while some of the corporate press have gone, this film isn't bad, it's just boring, that's only because they agree with the changes that were made in the first place. Because it really feels like Peter Pan and Wendy went into this wanting to fix the past. They hated the original story, hated where it came from, and had a checklist of everything that needed to be changed. You see, this is Time saying, it's not bad, it's just boring. But they're the same people that wrote the article about how Peter Pan adaptation confronts its racist origins. They thought there was something wrong with the very roots of this IP. And even when everything was changed for them, well, it's never enough, and they still weren't happy anyway. And this is mimicked across the corporate press, because Peter Pan and Wendy went through every character and changed them, fixed them for modern times. And you know what? No, that's still not enough, is it? There's still one problem that it doesn't solve, even though it solved every other one on the entire list they could possibly have asked for. Still not enough. Because hey, this movie has gone through specifically excluding people from the movie, but you know what? It still doesn't fix its message of colonialism. Yes, this article of complete and utter insanity comes from a CNN opinion piece, and CNN also reviewed it. Oh yeah, it's actually trash though, isn't it? Saying, you know what? It's not that bad. But it's not really good either, because despite the fact it fixed nearly every single issue they could possibly have asked for, it's still never enough. So with that in mind, why would Hollywood ever try to appease them in the first place? Because appease them, they certainly did. Now we already know they destroyed the Lost Boys from the trailers, although that interaction is slightly worse in the movies, simply because it goes on longer.
Which means you must all be
Lost Boys.
every last one of us. But you're not all boys. So? But I guess it doesn't really matter.
It really is Wendy's reaction to it that gets me. Oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't matter. Who cares about definitions in the first place? What went wrong on the outside world that enabled you to end up here when you never should have been? It was actually a compliment that girls were excluded because they were too clever to actually arrive in the first place. But now the world has degenerated to such a point where you're here as well. What's gone wrong? How can we fix your life? That could have been a topic that could have been asked in the movie. No, it's really not that deep. No, there was no narrative reason for this change. It was just another tick box. Which also, considering that the Lost Boys were on here because they were stupid, it does make some of the characters a wee bit problematic.
These puppets of yours, what do they look like?
But that's like most things in this movie. The changes that they made everything worse, because you could see that they looked at the original movie and had an aneurysm. They couldn't stand what it was. They just saw problems all over the place, and I've got to fix this. I've got to set the world to rights. You've got Disney Plus putting warnings on the original movie. Don't watch this. It's offensive, everybody. You can't handle it. But now there's a safe, cushioned version for 2023 that we're going to create, and somehow made it incredibly worse. Because you very quickly find out that these problems are actually the characters. They're their personalities. They're their depth. And if you remove that, what you end up with is just a husk, a shell. And that's why everybody is bored with this movie. Even the ones that wanted to like it because it gave them everything they could possibly ask for, they don't like it because they can sense inherently that there's nothing to this movie. There's no depth, there's no personality, there's no substance to it, there's no soul. This feels like a movie that was written by sensitivity readers. And if there's one thing we know about sensitivity readers, is that the reason they're so sensitive is because nobody can stand them. And that shines through into the changes that they've made. The LA Times did a review where they tell you what they've changed. You know, we altered Captain Hook, we changed Tiger Lily, and Wendy has a lot more agency, wielded with a feminist edge. And boy, is that the case. Wendy is a complete cow right from the start of the movie. As you can see right from the start, when she gets involved in the boys' fight, smashes a mirror, and then tries to get them in trouble for it.
Who is responsible for this?
Father, it wasn't my fault. It was their silly little game.
Enough.
And they started it. It wasn't.
You'd think that'd be bad enough, but they confront her about it, and this is her excuse.
Wendy, why did you say that? Why did you say it was our fault? You're a pirate, aren't you? It's every man for himself.
Oh, what a wonderful time to come in with a lot more agency when that agency is wielded without morality, responsibility, or most of all, repercussions. In fact, the thing that surprises me most about this movie is it's not called Wendy and Peter Pan. This is definitely Wendy's movie as she goes through just being absolutely instantly amazing at everything.
Peter Pan! Don't touch my brother! Or his bear.
Contrasted to Peter, who has been very much destroyed, even taking moments from him just to give it to other people. Remember when Wendy gets kicked off a ship? Surely that's Peter Pan's moment to shine and save her. Oh no, not in this one. Because Wendy can't be saved by someone with dangly bits, and so for that, she had to get saved by Tinkerbell instead.
You have the boy's magic.
No, this magic belongs to no boy.
Only to very soon after save Peter Pan herself.
No, hang on. Don't let go.
She goes through this movie in charge for absolutely no reason whatsoever. She hasn't done anything to deserve it, it's just kind of happens. In fact, at the end, she just goes, okay, Lost Boys, let's go back home. Why? There's no reason for it. Nobody came to this conclusion. There wasn't a journey people went on that made them realize that actually we should leave this island. They just go. I still don't know why. There could have been a storyline where the Lost Boys actually realized that they don't want to be here anymore, but we can't do that because we're too busy focusing on Wendy and what she wants. Why? I don't know. Because there was absolutely nothing to like about her character at all. Oh, and then there was Tinkerbell. Could we get some interesting drama between Wendy and Tinkerbell? No, because Tinkerbell is her friend now. Tinkerbell has also been stripped of anything actually resembling Tinkerbell. I mean, yes, obviously Peter Pan can't be shown anymore, it's the current year, but the actress obviously went around doing a racist press tour. It's cool to be part of creating a new norm. There's a generation of kids, well, they'll know that they're included in this fairy tale. You know, no kid has ever felt like part of a fairy tale before. We can't actually look at other characters. No, everything's got to be about us individually. And so now we've all got to pretend we're part of 1900s England? It's particularly weird, but nobody's ever accused an actor of being bright. I mean, I would have thought the insinuation that you don't have any fairy tales of your own, and so have to impose yourself into a place that you never were, would actually be incredibly offensive. I'd be offended by that personally, but apparently, no, we're not gonna dig into that one. That'd be a bit problematic. But that's not a problem for this movie, because they were trying to find problems which didn't exist, and that means when they fixed them, they made problems instead, yes. With Entertainment Weekly going, we are correcting Disney's history with this story, except there is a problem that the only principal role for a black actor in this is incapable of speech, and it can feel troubling given the context, even if true to the character in the original story, because there really is only one time that anyone can understand Tinkerbell, and that's when Wendy, still depicted by a white woman, gotta put that in little dashes just to draw extra attention to it and really nail that problem home. Takes the time to really hear Tink does Shahidi get a single line of spoken dialogue the audience can comprehend. And they are right that the movie insinuates that Peter could understand it if he wanted to. He just can't be bothered to even try.
Based economy.
And why would he in this? Because the original source material was absolutely fine, but this one, oh boy, you can definitely make an argument that this movie has racist origins. We've just heard about the problems that they did to Tinkerbell, but Peter Pan himself, well, we're going to swap him as well, and then we're going to strip him of anything that made him a good character. It seems a little bit odd, the two things linked together, because Peter Pan before, he was a hero, he was great, but in Peter Pan and Wendy, he's no longer a hero. In fact, he's arguably the villain. Because like I said, they have stripped some of his heroic moments from him. He can't save Wendy, she has to save him. She also wins the final fight on the ship by flipping it over because he's busy with Hook.
Everyone, hang on!
And while he does have the odd heroic moment, there's not really much to him. This is a character who's basically destroyed, which is where the villain arc comes in. He caused Hook. He was the one that ejected him from the first place, and Hook came back for revenge. Before, Hook may have been evil, but in this, Hook's sympathetic. He can't be a villain because he just enjoys doing bad things. Instead, no, you should feel sorry for him. It's not really his fault. It's the environment that made him like this. Peter made him like this. Captain Hook, when he was a child, missed going home, and so Peter Pan forced him out. Found by pirates and managed to come back to Neverland, did he start going after Peter Pan, who then promptly cut off his arm. Pan won't let the Lost Boys actually talk about what they know of where Captain Hook's origins actually were. He kind of rules them with an iron fist. And while they both hate each other, it's only really Captain Hook which is justified. As far as the story goes, Peter Pan only hates Hook because Hook got homesick for a bit.
But I guess it doesn't really matter.
And then blames Hook for his feelings, making him having to eject him from Neverland. In this situation, Peter Pan is the unreasonable one. And then we have Tiger Lily. Oh, there were so many problems before. Apparently, you can't show her as they did originally, and so everything's got to change. And in doing so, make her entirely pointless to the movie. I don't know why she exists. She was meant to get kidnapped by Captain Hook from the source material. Well, that can't happen, because then she wouldn't be perfect. That would be taking away her agency. And so instead, Captain Hook captures the Lost Boys, because who cares if you make some people with dangly bits look like idiots? No, instead, Tiger Lily's got to come along and save them instead. She's amazing, you see. The issue is, there isn't really any reason for her to do anything when she's not center of the story, and so instead she just kind of turns up for no reason. There's even a scene of her chasing behind a ship that is leaving, and she has to climb up a rope to get on it. And there is no reason for her to do any of this. It's just like they realized, oh, she hasn't been in the movie for a while. How are we going to get her on that ship? Well, she'll just run after it then. So they force her into this scene just for extra screen time, because everybody who is involved in the scene was already on the boat, and she just walks across the ship, one-shotting everybody who comes anywhere near her, just to show you all how amazing and incredible she is. If you remove Tiger Lily from this entire movie, everything in the movie would be exactly the same. So please tell me, have you fixed the problems of the original source material? Or instead, did you just look at the key parts of the original source material that made it liked in the first place and strip them away, so now you've ended up with nothing? A grey mush of absolutely safe entertainment, which is drudgery, even by the very people who would love to have said how amazing your stuff was, because they're fully on board with everything you're doing. It's just that everything you do leads to trash. And there's their removal of Tinkerbell glowing, which is absolutely bizarre, because that scene wasn't very impressive. Barely even stands out from the background. We did get the director desperately backpedaling, trying to justify why he'd made such an obviously bad decision about her lack of luminescence. And he tries to come up with a reason for it, like, where's the light actually coming from? But I think he actually gave the true answer right up front. That's something that never even occurred to him. Why isn't she glowing? Just didn't consider it, mate. I should probably try and make up a reason afterwards. Where's the light coming from? Do her wings actually light up? There's a difference between animation and what things look like in live action. Yeah, that's an excuse that sounds about right. Now, obviously, this doesn't stand up to anybody who even briefly thinks about this, as you can clearly see where the glowing comes from in the pixie dust that they made glow. And there's even a scene in the movie where she's originally captured by the boys, and what does he do? Opens his hand, and she's glowing.
He was flying.
How?
A little bug did it.
I don't think that's a bug.
Even in the movie, they contradict whether she should glow or not in different scenes, which is why this explanation doesn't make sense, because it's not true. The reason why he contradicts it is because he never even thought about it in the first place. And if you think that the director didn't hate the source material to begin with, oh no, because he even says in this about Tiger Lily, the challenge for us was, how do we take this character who, going back to the original text, was problematic, and give her a role that is not only supporting, but integral to the entire movie? This is a director who got to make a project who hated the original source material, and then thinks he's giving someone an integral role, and doesn't even realize that he made her a 2D, shallow as a duck's backside character who contributed nothing to the movie. He's right, Tiger Lily was absolutely problematic, but it was in Peter Pan and Wendy. Now, there was one bit of the movie that I liked. Jude Law is easily the best actor of the entire movie, and I did actually like the core of the idea between Peter Pan and him, that they'd had a past relationship, something had gone on, Pan had kicked him out, and he'd come back and wanted revenge. There's a core of a good idea there, it just wasn't expanded on very well in the actual movie. Jude Law did his best with it, there just wasn't really much material to chew on. The positives are very brief though, because the next thing you get onto is the CGI, and well, I'll just show you what the crocodile looked like in one of the scenes, shall I? There were other scenes where he looked okay. I am cherry-picking that one as the worst example, but you know, there's a broad range available in this movie. In fact, if I didn't say that was a crocodile, I'm not sure I'd know what that was. But that leads us on to the interesting reaction from the corporate media, because they had an extreme problem. Because yes, audiences hated this movie, 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, 4.4 on IMDb, with the trailers downvoted to oblivion. Their issue was, the critics also weren't too fond of it, with 67%. The Times say it's an exercise in drudgery. CNN, it lacks enough magic to truly take flight. Peter Pan and Wendy isn't a complete failure, but it doesn't pass the test of keeping people's attention. We had TV Line saying Jude Law is the only reason to watch the movie, and while I agree he's easily the best actor, that's not enough to make you want to watch it. While I thought the story between Peter Pan and Captain Hook was an interesting idea, Captain Hook himself had been absolutely destroyed and turned into a basically whimpering fool. Somebody who simply acted evil because he'd never had any happy memories.
Gotcha. Just think happy thoughts.
Peter, I haven't got any.
All in all, he had a very feminine storyline. It was a character just driven by his feelings, acting out because he felt a bit miserable. And while MovieWeb said this is what every live-action remake should aspire to be, Entertainment Weekly says Wendy is more of a strong female character, and when she teams up with Tiger Lily and Tinkerbell, it's intersectional girl power for the win. But even with that going for it, some more pixie dust might have been helpful. Even when this movie gives us every single social message we could want. Still trash though, isn't it? This is the circle that the corporate media is desperately trying to square. Their burden to carry across the city. How can we have something that gives us literally everything we have ever asked for, everything we praise, and yet it's still trash? LA Times, Peter Pan and Wendy charts a familiar course. It's a shame there aren't more wow moments. The movie is entertaining and has polish. It's also very safe, though. It turns out when you remove all of those problems that you saw with the original movie, you end up with something that's safe, that doesn't want to offend, that's just kind of 2D and boring. It's like dry toast.
But I guess it doesn't really matter.
Something that was made more for the Darlings children's parents, not the Lost Boys. We deliberately ripped out the soul and the artistic vision from the original work, and then wondered why this new movie doesn't have any soul. And like any time a journalist has cognitive dissonance, it can't be their fault, and so they had to come out with someone to blame. And who are they going to blame for this? Well, obviously, it was going to be the fans. Don't you know those fans have been review bombing again? I mean, yes, we do agree that this movie is incredibly boring, and it did set out to solve every single problematic issue that we could possibly find. Don't you know those sensitivity readers worked overtime? But you know what we can't have if we make something politically correct and that makes it entirely boring? You can't come out and call us on it. That'd be review bombing. Yes, this is an article which complains about fans slamming the movie for being drab and depressing in the visual department, while directly underneath it having a drab and depressing visual. It's incredibly dark, she's a fairy, she's not glowing, but they say the director has done a good job explaining why the movie is gloomy. It doesn't matter if he explains why the movie is gloomy. Peter Pan shouldn't be gloomy in the first place. But he said he wanted to make it feel like it's a place that children could actually get to. Yes, what a great message for kids. You can get to this place because it's drab, depressing, and dangerous. Yet Neverland before was bright, shiny, and full of hope. It was a place to escape from your life, literally, to go away and have adventures. But now, no. Now you can visit Slough. Doesn't really have the same ring to it when you strip everything of meaning from the world, does it? But viewers weren't happy about the final product, and that led to something that's become all too common. Review bombing. They don't even think that the viewers are lying. They understand that the viewers don't like the product, but even when the viewers give honest reviews in their opinion, still review bombing. You literally cannot say anything negative about a piece of work, even when it's accurate, even when they agree with you, because they're still going to call it review bombing. How do you solve the cognitive dissonance of you coming out with a list of demands for a piece of work, and then somebody going down the entire list and fixing every single problem that you could possibly have, only for it to still be trash? Only for you to kind of realize in your brain that you're the problem. Well, you come out with the opinion that even when a piece of work is objectively terrible, you still can't give it a negative review, because that would be review bombing. It's the perfect excuse for a shill.
But I guess it doesn't really matter.
And even in the same article, they admit themselves that actually relying on your own backlog for inspiration is at best laziness, and at worst, shows the creative well is running dry, where the only thing you can do is take your own IPs and then destroy them because you don't agree with what they said anymore. Maybe that's why they altered Wendy into what one reviewer called an overpowered Mary Sue, when really that's kind of the least of the issues. Yes, at the end, they tried to do the story bit of, well, actually, you're a kid and you should grow up, and that's good. There are adventures that you can have over here, moving on with your life. But at no point in the rest of the movie had we really led up to that. It just came out of nowhere. Wendy just went, okay, lads, time to leave, and we all left, and then the next thing we're all growing up, and we really should, because that's where the adventures are. Nobody learned anything, nobody had time, because we're just focusing on Wendy, when really, these were the lost boys. It was those people that needed to be taught the lesson, and that meant that the story inevitably would have to revolve around Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, and instead it revolved around the character who just decided to go home. Maybe that could have been the reason for her going to the island. Maybe she could have taught them this across the movie. Maybe she could have come in knowing that actually this is a horrible way to live. Would have been a lot better for the storyline. Things would have actually progressed throughout the movie. Yeah, that never happened. And while we could talk about it, we could fix it. We could point out these problems. Instead, no, we've got to put our heads in the sand and blame the audience for review bombing things. People who are actually telling Disney the flaws in what they did, they're the ones which are getting attacked. We're going to run defense for terrible movies like The Eternals, which save lives, somehow try to spin that the opinions are mixed about this from the audience. I don't know, 20% to me doesn't look mixed. Brings up that The Little Mermaid is also following a similar path, because we know what this means. If you are somebody that hates the source material and thinks it needs to be changed, then you have different priorities. You go around thinking that the original is something to destroy and change into something else, something that you prefer, but you don't have the talent to, because if you did, you'd understand that the original was far better than anything you could make. The sheer fact that you can't comprehend why people like the original and think that you need to change it is why everybody knows that what you're going to make is awful in the first place. That's why everything you make looks awful in the first place, because your intention to destroy something that people enjoy shines through onto the screen. And even that same website admits again, it's just another half-baked adaptation. The fans are review bombing the movie. Right though, they are right. Yes, Peter Pan and Wendy's getting review bombed. And that doesn't bode well for The Little Mermaid. No, who would have thought getting racists to remake historical works that were loved around the world could somehow backfire? Oh, maybe anyone with half a brain could have predicted the backlash coming for that one a mile off. Now, they do say the negativity has been so overwhelming it's downright suspicious, but to me that just means they haven't seen the movie, or they'd understand. Because even the Guardians out here calling it passable but unnecessary remake plays it safe, politically correct you might say. And while it may not be the rockiest trip to Neverland, let's just pray it's the last. It's a movie that's so bad, they just hope we all learn never to do that again. But we still can't let those fans think they were right. Because the thing is, Flix Patrol, and I've not looked into this, I've not double-checked their working or anything, but they have listed Peter Pan and Wendy as #1 on Disney+, but basically everywhere. So loads of people watched it, and then universally thought it was trash. Because when the media said this was safe, they weren't kidding. Because in Screen Rant's 10 biggest differences, it's not just updates to Tiger Lily, cutting the mermaid scene, or Tinkerbell's different look. But there was a time when Peter Pan actually died, and I'd forgotten about this until I saw this bit of the article. And it is the one time that Tiger Lily is useful, and it doesn't make any sense. Because Peter gets hacked across the chest by Hook, and falls down, and the guy's dead. But then Tiger Lily comes along, just stuffs some plants onto his chest, and he immediately recovers. That's the only time that Tiger Lily is actually needed in this entire thing, and it would have made sense. Okay, this is Neverland, there's magic. I can believe maybe her plants bring people back from the dead. Fine. Maybe there was a spark of life and Tiger Lily magically healed him super fast. Except no, there's a specific scene where Peter Pan says that magic wasn't involved in healing him at all. It's all down to Tiger Lily's skill.
How did you survive? Faith, trust, and pixie dust.
No pixie dust this time. No magic, no tricks. Just a little help from my friends.
I mean, I didn't know that plants could instantaneously heal you from certain death, but apparently you just need enough skill. Once you've gone and fixed those origins, it gives you superpowers that nobody else alive could possibly have even considered. And so we're in a very awkward position where the press got everything they wanted, and it made something that was completely awful, but they can't admit that it's their fault and that their ideas are the ones that caused it. And so they tried to blame the fans. But then there was another tactic, one where we desperately try and grab hold of anything to say is good, even when basically nothing exists. That is how you end up with such massive reaches, as a good thing is that the Lost Boys no longer exclude anybody, despite the fact that the term boys excludes people deliberately. We are so desperate to try and find something to say is good, we forgot how English works. Now, there were some other interesting parts of the movies, such as the story about how Jude Law shared how he bribed the child actors on the Peter Pan set. In today's day and age, that's a bit of a dangerous headline to scroll down past, isn't it? But instead, I just thought it was an interesting way of filming something, that Jude Law was told never to be out of character around the kids, so they would actually find him scary whenever they met him. He just stayed as Hook the whole time, and tried to scare the kids whenever he met him. That sounds awful, he said. Because he thought it was easier for the young actors not to see him going in and out of character, so their reactions to him on set were genuine, because he was basically terrifying them at all times. And at the end, he tried to win over the kids, so he bought them ice cream. Although when he finishes it with nothing like chocolate ice cream to persuade a child that you're alright, well, maybe in Hollywood we just stay away from that one. No, Peter Pan and Wendy is a very unusual situation, because I kind of think that everybody is right. The movie, if you just took it by itself, isn't a bad movie as such. It is just safe and boring. It's like dry bread. But that is if you're judging it on its own, without actually taking into account everything that came before, everything it could have had, and everything which they deliberately and intentionally destroyed because they hated where it came from. Hated their culture, their past, their history, and their heritage. They thought, we can't do that, that's a problem. And so they destroyed everything it was, stripped it from its soul, and that is why it turned into this boring, grey mush. On its own, it's boring, inoffensive, and forgettable. But when you take into account the context of where it came from, it's an abomination. This was a movie created by people who never should have been given the job. Because when you're doing a remake, the person should like the original thing. They should want to pay homage to it, not destroy it. And yet this director is Hollywood through and through. He is the classic critic, the corporate media. They all agree on exactly what should have been changed. They all think the original was a massive problem. And yet when they got exactly what they wanted, they didn't like that either. Because these are people that hate the past, but they have no vision for the future, no positive thing to create. They just want to tear down. There are some that accuse me of doing the same thing, that I don't create anything, that I wouldn't have a vision, and yet I do. It's what we had before. I'm proud of where I came from. I like what we had. Movies used to be better, and yet now the corporate press want to progress into the future. They've got a list of problems and they want them solved, and yet when they get what they want, when they get the entertainment, which is exactly where they want to progress, they don't like what they're creating. And so all I really want is the answer to one question. If the corporate media are getting exactly what they want, and yet even their best work gives them 67%, and a load of reviews which are entirely unhappy with the product of their own vision, then maybe what you should do is listen to the audience, the paying customers, the ones who will actually give you a positive bottom line, the ones who know what they want and will actually create something which is good, quality entertainment which people enjoy and are willing to pay you for, because the corporate media have absolutely no idea how to make quality entertainment, and nor does Hollywood, but the audience do. It's back there, it's what we had, and it's going back to your roots. But that can only be created by people who liked the past, who are proud of it. People who don't think that the past was problematic, because the director thought it was problematic. And so if Hollywood is filled with people like the corporate media, people who don't even like what they create, but also hate what came before, then to me the only solution is to hire better people. People who did like what came before, people who know what good entertainment is, because they've already seen it, and they just want to make it again. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.